Hello fellow collectors, I hope you're all doing really well. Today I'm continuing my series on the best films I watched in the preceding month. I know we're well into May now, but things have been just a bit busy for me, so it's taken a bit longer to get this one done. Also, just to mention, I would have added Star Trek the Motion Picture and Wrath of Khan to this list, but I decided to make a separate video for the Star Trek films 1 to 6, where I talk about them in a bit more depth, which if you haven't seen, please feel free to check out. So let's get right into things and talk about the best films I watched during April. First up, and we have a film from Jim Jarmusch from 2009, The Limits of Control. I picked this one up quite a while back in an Arrow sale, purely because it's from Jim Jarmusch, and that's more than enough for me to be interested. It's pretty much a story of a quiet, contemplative assassin on a mission, and it follows him as he travels from one contact to another and draws inexorably closer to the target. It's interesting because more recently, during other films, I found myself particularly bored or just disinterested with many of the action scenes, especially with the bigger blockbusters where they just go on forever. I'm far more interested in the build-up and in the interactions between the characters. Well, here we have a film that is pretty much entirely the interesting stuff. It's almost an anti-action film with an action-style premise. Isaac Dabancoli is perfectly cast here, and he emanates this calm demeanour which you feel hides this very capable violence. As usual with Jarmusch's films, this has a stellar cast, though the others are not really in it very much except for the odd scene here and there. But you do have Tilda Swinton, John Hurt, Bill Murray and Gael Garcia Bernal. Overall, this one was really fascinating, and I was completely engaged in it. Another winner from Jim Jarmusch. Next, and we have the only film noir on my list for this month, which is highly unlike me, I know, and it's Too Late for Tears from 1949, directed by Byron Haskin, who I'd not heard of previously. This was another one bought in a previous Arrow sale at the end of last year, and it features Elizabeth Scott and Dan Daye, who seems to be in quite a few things that I've been watching recently. I've got to say that I was not prepared for this one. I went in just expecting another noir, but this was dark, even for a film noir. It's all about a couple who get a bag full of money dropped into their car by mistake, and that sets the whole story off. Elizabeth Scott's character is quite simply terrifying. She expertly plays these subtle changes in attitude for her character, and the escalations rise to dizzying effect. It's at once mesmerising and horrifying. There are multiple threads to this one as well, and things that keep you guessing. Mystery, romance and greed all play their parts. I also felt like this film played some noir tropes on their head just a little bit, and certain things that you would naturally expect. For example, the front cover of this one might lead you in a certain direction, while these things don't necessarily work out how you think they will. It all builds up to a wonderfully dramatic ending, and I absolutely loved it. Next, and we have The Snake Pit from Indicator. This is one from 1948, starring the inimitable Olivia de Havilland, and directed by Anatoly Litvak. One thing that I both like and dislike from Indicator is the lack of blurb on the back of these cases. When I want some quick information about a film, it's annoying that they don't have it, but in some cases it's really nice to go in completely unaware of the story at all. In this case, I went in completely unaware, and it was a pretty wonderful journey. I can't get any further into my thoughts without saying how unbelievably incredible Olivia de Havilland is here. If you've watched previous videos of mine, I've mentioned a few times how fantastic of an actress I think she was, and here, my goodness, she surpasses herself. It's an absolute tour de force. I'm continually blown away by her talent and performances, and it's so wonderful to see her talents on full display in The Snake Pit, and she carries the whole film on her shoulders. She plays a patient in a mental health hospital, and the film follows her journey to try to get better while she's there. It's harrowing, heartbreaking, it's difficult with heartwarming and faith-restoring moments. In some ways it's of its time, but also incredibly interesting that this was even addressed at all, considering it was made in 1948, and they talk about dealing and finding the root cause of issues. It was just really well made, with wonderful performances from all of the cast, and thoroughly enjoyable. Then, last but not least for April, is One-Eyed Jacks. As the back of the case says, it's a film with a troubled history that eventually came to be the only film directed by Marlon Brando, who also stars as our lead man in this one. It's funny because I often think I'm not a huge fan of westerns, and then when I put one on, I end up loving it, and that was the case here. Brando and Karl Malden have excellent chemistry, and this is the third film featuring them together. Though I don't remember much interaction between them in A Streetcar Named Desire, On the Waterfront features them together prominently, and they are excellent, and the same goes for One-Eyed Jacks. At its heart, this is a story about bank robbers and revenge, but there's so much that happens as other characters get involved and situations change. It's always the sign of a good film for me when you find yourself rooting for people who really you shouldn't be rooting for to win out, and this was absolutely the case for me here. It's only the women in the film who have many redeeming qualities at all, and those characters really highlight the stark difference between themselves and the very morally questionable men. It's a story with plenty of action, tense moments, cruelty and betrayal. Times when you think all is lost and times when you think victory is at hand. I think there are only a very few moments where you can sort of see the difficulties the film had come through appearing on screen, but these are easy to forgive, as the overall narrative carries us along so well, and for a film of 2 hours 20 minutes, it really kept my attention well, and certainly didn't feel that long at all. A couple customary honourable mentions from me, the first being 20th Century from Indicator, which is an early screwball comedy that has, particularly from John Barrymore, a wildly over-the-top and melodramatic performance which was hilarious. And lastly, the very famous A Trip to the Moon from George Méliès, which was 15 incredible minutes of early film. And I can highly recommend this release from Arrow, which also features the colour version, which I believe was painstakingly restored as the frames were individually painted originally. An incredible feat. Well, that was my April in film, and I hope yours was wonderful as well. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you in the next video.